Good morning, mushrooms, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers, sisters, mothers, misters, and all my cousins. This is Breaking Down the News, and it's time to plug in. And so, without further ado, let's jump in. Friday, May 1st. It's a 3-day weekend, and so many of you are probably still in bed because you don't have to go to the office, right? You can see I'm awfully smiley. I don't know particularly why, other than the fact that I've halfway through my second cup of coffee. Let's get into the news here. Living in the future. Well, I try to stick with the present. Well, simple. More than 3.2 million people have been infected by the virus. Surprise! We have here have been infected and our magical by, so we know that this is a passive and it's a present perfect passive, because we're talking about something that started in the past and continues up to the present. So up to now. Long-term strategy seeks to pin the blame on Beijing. It's like you've got a little safety pin like you'd use to attach a ribbon to your shirt. Typically, we pin our hopes to something, and so we're attaching our hopes to something. We pin positive things to something, but with pin on, it's almost always blame. So to pin the blame on somebody means to attach the blame to them. And why the difference? Well, it's just because we like to make English difficult for all of you guys out there. Expert report predicts up to 2 more years, woohoo, of pandemic misery. Misery. The other day we had agony, which is extreme pain, and misery is extreme suffering, unhappiness, sadness. Just like you could say that I feel miserable. I don't, but maybe somebody with the virus could say I feel miserable because they are very unhappy and they are suffering. Always positive. That's why you got to keep a smile on your face. Some of it I skip over, other things I just kind of miss, and then we catch as we go through. Forgive me, it is the morning, it's dark when I start this. And actually, notice the new format, Berna, taking some of your feedback and applying it in a positive fashion. And so, Trump contradicts. We had contradiction yesterday. One person says this, the other person says that. Contra, against, diction, speech, yeah? And so instead of contradicting himself, he's contradicting his intel agencies. Intel, short for intelligence, but intel specifically is that sort of secrets that governments or even companies obtain to try and use against their enemies to win. Oh, my fingers, the air quotes are going crazy today. I'm going to try and keep them under control. He claims that he has seen evidence that coronavirus originated in a Chinese lab. The origin of something, where something comes from, and to originate somewhere, it means that you come from there. Ta-da! Word again and again and again, but it's because it's a great word. Hundreds of tourists are still stranded in the Maldives. To be stranded somewhere means to be stuck. You cannot move. You have no way of getting out. Much like Tom Hanks and his good friend, the volleyball Wilson, in Castaway, I believe the title was, or Robinson Crusoe, famously from literature. Hilton CEO shatters Trump's conspiracy theory while sitting beside him. Beside, just a nice fancy way of saying next to, and so one was here, the other was here. And to shatter means to break into lots of tiny little pieces, much like if I had my glass of water, which is actually empty, but if I were to drop it on the floor, then it would shatter into a million, not counting, but a million different little pieces. You might hear people from the UK often say, oh, I'm so tired, I'm shattered. Yeah, and it just means that they're not functional because they're broken down into a million little pieces. Yeah, but you can shatter beliefs, you can shatter dreams, you can shatter expectations. Yeah, it's about destruction. Buckle up! And that's just about or putting the safety belt on in the car, because with a belt, you've got the buckle. And so buckle up, we have signs all over the US that say buckle up, it's the law. And so especially when we tell somebody to buckle up, it means that the road might get a little bit bumpy ahead. And why is it going to be bumpy? Because they're going to be burning through a lot of money. And so, but to burn through something, just, yeah, very nice visual imagery, and it just means to use it up very quickly. Back-to-back challenges. By back-to-back, it means one after another, or in a row, or consecutively. If you're binge watching a program on television, you watch several episodes back to back, one after another, in a row, consecutively. Confirms that she's pregnant. And so to confirm is to say that yes, something is true. The trash news, like, oh, she's pregnant. And she's like, yeah, well, you're right. And so you could say she admits it, or she just confirms it. Remember, to admit is usually against your will. You didn't really want to confirm it. If something is eye-opening, it can mean shocking, often surprising, but in a way that you learn something new about the world. You have an eye-opening study, teaches you something about the world. You could say it was a real eye-opener. To make it into more of a verbal phrase, we could say like, oh wow, speaking with him really opened my eyes to the suffering and the difficulty of life as a homeless person. To open somebody's eyes to something else. Yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience. It was an eye-opener. Where did it go wrong? I hope that explanation didn't go wrong. But to go right, to go wrong, something performed well, and the outcome was good or bad. Ta-da! I guess this makes 3 days in a row. You can hear Nobel Prize winner's bold plan, a brave plan, a courageous plan. He's not walking softly here. He's like, yo, let's do this. Let's change everything. Let's reshape the world. Read this before you venture out in public. It sounds like some sort of warning. Gonna give you some sort of tip. To venture, and it's not really a phrasal verb, but often we venture out of our homes. And think about the word adventure, right? And so to venture means to go do something that could be risky, could be dangerous. That's why we also say as a noun, you might hear about business ventures. Or then VCs, thinking about startups. We have VCs, that's venture capital. Because they're basically risking money, and anytime you start a new business, that is taking substantial financial risks. To venture out, to venture forth, like in Star Trek, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Exploring space, talking to aliens, stuff like that. Just threw in Star Trek, now here's a little Star Wars. The dark side of working from home. Everything has two sides. You know, the yin and the yang, the white and the black, or just like a coin. We say every coin has two sides, right? And so you got to take the good with the bad, but working from home, lots of people love it. There's the good sides. However, there are the dark sides as well, where you lose all of your friends and you get out of shape and you get really lonely. And those are, I guess, a lot of anger expressed outward. Rage, anger expressed outward. Now, if something we had the other day, the adjective outrageous, that just means shocking or surprising. It doesn't necessarily mean that it makes you angry, but if we're talking about outrage as a noun, then it is definitely about anger. And why are people so angry? Because the beach is sprayed with bleach. I didn't even realize it rhymes, but the beach is sprayed with bleach. I made that rhyme sound a little too happy. Bleach, what makes your socks and underwear white? Not very healthy. And the beach is sprayed. If we spray something, we've got a bottle, and this is a spray bottle. And it uses air pressure to force liquid out into small droplets. And that's why sometimes if somebody is talking to you and maybe too close and they're talking really fast and maybe they're angry and like the spit starts to come out of their mouth, you look at them and you're like, yo, step back, I already had my shower today. Say it, don't spray it. All right, Yeah, there's some middle school for you right there. If you're gonna lay something out, just like you lay it out onto the table, and so if you put everything out there, boop, 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 it's clearly visible, and people can clearly understand exactly everything that you're talking about. Now, that's very physical, very literal, but here, if you're going to lay something out, it just means to explain something in a very clear fashion. Let me lay out the advantages and disadvantages of home office because it has a dark side. Lays out, he's very clearly explaining the mental toll of virus for frontline workers. And so yes, we've had this word toll. In this case, it means the negative effects, the bad things, or the harm that it causes. The virus is taking a toll on frontline workers, and Dr. Sanjay Gupta is laying out, clearly explaining how, as if we couldn't really figure it out ourselves, or said criminal that the detective was pursuing, maybe he broke into somebody's office and there's that metal box with the money and the jewelry. That is a safe. And the guy who opens the safe without the combination is a safe cracker. He doesn't actually break it open, but yeah, we said to crack the safe, crack the case. He cracked into Hollywood. He cracked Hollywood's egg and was able to access the mysterious interiors of Hollywood. Here we go. Protesters pour into the Michigan Capitol. Now, this is very similar to other vocabulary we've had recently. We had birds, or beachgoers, flocking to the beach. Everybody was moving as a big group to the beach. We had then people like insects or ants swarming the beach. Like if you leave some candy in your kitchen, the ants will swarm to it. Now here, they're pouring into it, much like liquid. You pour one glass into the other. So they're pouring into very quickly. There's a surge, more old vocabulary, a surge of protesters pouring into the Michigan Capitol, and they're calling for an end to the state of emergency. To call for something is to demand something in a public fashion. Call for someone to do something. Well, look at that. You can buy a piece of the moon for $2.5 million. That sounds like a horrific waste of money. Quite literally, to evaporate. For example, if I took some of this water and I dumped it on my hand and I waited long enough, that water that is there, I did have water. If that water will eventually disappear. The natural process of a liquid turning into a gas. And so it just means to disappear. Yeah? And so energy use has evaporated. Very visual way of saying decreased, it plummeted, it plunged, it dropped dramatically. We had to, often we're cleaning and we're wiping down our groceries. To wipe something out means if you're like wiping off a table to clean it, but to wipe something out means it's completely gone. There is no more of it. Just like an asteroid, some space rock or a comet came, hit the Earth, and it wiped out all of the dinosaurs. We don't know. It doesn't say. What has wiped out all of this energy demand? Yes. That's why we use the passive, because it's obvious. The virus and the closure of all industries and movement and everything else. It's like a predetermined future, and determined by whom? The universe. Yeah. He was destined for a farming career because that's what his family had done for generations. However, now, instead, he's a world champion. Of what? I do not know. What happens when COVID-19 research funding gets political? Well, obviously, money gets wasted, people die. Funding just means money. Funds means money. But especially funding, or as a verb, to fund, means to take said money and specify it, set it aside for a particular purpose. And so you've probably heard of like retirement funds, healthcare funds, mutual funds. Those are bunches of money that are being applied to or set aside for a particular purpose. Funding, meaning the giving of money for virus research. And so what happens when it gets political? I don't know. You're just going to have to read the article. All right, more positive vocabulary. The fact of being cruel. But what does cruel mean? Cruelty means being very mean and causing pain or suffering to somebody else. In the US, we have an association, the ASPCA, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. So people, they try and prevent people from beating their dogs and stuff like that. US splits with allies again, all right? To split, like to divide. There's things together and then you split them apart. It's interesting though, splits with, because you'd think it'd be splits from because you're going away from. But, sorry, English, surprise, isn't always logical. And so we split with somebody. Just like the phrasal verb then, to split up with somebody. Thinking about the end of relationships. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that you two aren't together anymore. Why did you split up? You split up with her? Yes, yeah, oh no, she broke up with you. I understand. If you are looking to do something, it means you are planning to do it, but it's not written in stone, it's not written on paper, it's an informal plan. The Allies want to stop the ban, and US then is splitting from them because it wants to extend or prolong the ban. Remember, prolong is just extend in time, whereas extend can be about physical distance as well. To make your case for something just means to try and persuade somebody to do something. To recycle vocabulary from this week, the person was arrested and is charged with a crime, and so then his lawyer needs to make a case for them because his client will plead innocent. He has entered a plea of innocence, and so then other people will try to sue him for $1 billion as reparations for the crime and the harm that person committed. So that's it for my part of the news. Those were the headlines. Ladies and gentlemen, happy Friday, May 1st. Everybody in Europe, you're probably on holiday today, and so enjoy the day. Go out for a walk if you can, wear a mask, or even better yet, stay home and read a book. This has been Breaking Down the News, and this has been English Otherwise. And so while it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day here in Barcelona, sad to say, won't be able to go down to the beach. Thank you very much, everybody. Like, subscribe, follow, etc. Send to a friend, share, help us out, and we'll keep making more magic. Or not magic, but getting better.